I knew I had made the worst decision of my life when my boss laughed in my face as I handed him my resignation letter. "You're throwing away a six-figure salary for what? Some little dream?" He sneered, leaning back in his leather chair like a king watching a jester perform. And maybe he was right. Maybe I was a fool. But sometimes fools are the only ones brave enough to walk into the fire. It wasn't just about the job. It was about me. I had been hiding in suits, in meaningless promotions, in late-night spreadsheets that made me forget I was alone. The truth was heavier than any paycheck. And one day, I just couldn't keep carrying it. So I left. I didn't expect him to notice. Ethan Ramirez, my colleague, my tormentor, my impossible crush. He had been the star of every meeting, the golden boy of the company, the one who could crack a joke and make the whole office laugh while I silently memorized the curve of his smile. He never looked at me, at least not in the way I wanted. Until the day I walked out. "Wait, what the hell are you doing?" he had said, his voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. His hand had caught my wrist at the elevator doors, his dark eyes locking on mine with something that looked dangerously close to desperation. And for the first time, I saw him break. The truth is, New York City is the worst place to have a broken heart. Every street corner feels like a stage, and everyone is always moving too fast to notice if you're drowning. After I quit, I traded my skyscraper office view for a cramped studio apartment in Brooklyn, where the radiator clanged like a broken drum and the ceiling leaked when it rained. But it was mine. I wrote late into the night, scribbling half-finished stories about love I was too afraid to claim in real life. I thought maybe, finally, I could start fresh away from him, away from the constant ache of wanting something I couldn't have. Then Ethan showed up. I still remember the first time he knocked on my apartment door, standing there like he had every right to invade my new world. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, tie loose, as if he had sprinted straight from the office. "You really just left," he said, pushing past me without waiting for an invitation. He scanned the tiny space, disbelief in his eyes. For this. I hated him in that moment. Hated the way he made everything sound small. Hated the way he filled up the room with his presence. But most of all, I hated the part of me that was glad he came. "Yeah," I said flatly. "For this. For me." He turned to me then, his jaw tightening, his expression unreadable. "You don't get to just disappear." The words hung between us, heavy and dangerous. The thing about Ethan was that he was always magnetic. People gravitated toward him like he was the sun and they were helpless planets. But standing in my tiny apartment, he wasn't the sun anymore. He was a storm, tearing through everything I had built. "Why do you care?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. His silence was louder than any answer. I thought he would leave. I thought he'd shake his head, mutter something arrogant, and walk out like he always did. But instead, he stepped closer. Too close. His hand brushed against mine on the counter. An accident that didn't feel like an accident at all. And then he whispered, almost like a confession, "Because I can't stop thinking about you." Those words changed everything and nothing. Because as much as I wanted to believe them, as much as my chest burned with the possibility that he might finally see me the way I had seen him for years, Ethan was still Ethan. He was the guy who joked too loudly, who flirted with receptionists, who smiled at me in meetings like I was nothing more than background noise. And I was terrified that this was just another game to him. But God, when his hand finally closed around mine, when his thumb traced the back of my skin like he had been waiting for years to touch me, wanted so badly to believe, New York became our battleground. Some nights, he would show up at my door with takeout, sitting on the floor with me as we ate greasy noodles and argued about everything from politics to baseball. Other nights, he'd pull me into a crowded bar, his hand never straying far from the small of my back. Like he was claiming me in a language only I could understand. But then there were the nights he didn't come. The nights I'd see pictures of him on Instagram with some beautiful woman on his arm, smiling like he belonged anywhere but here with me. That was when the ache returned, sharper than ever. Because loving Ethan felt like holding fire I was always going to get burned. And yet, couldn't let go. Maybe because deep down, I knew he was burning too. It was easier to pretend it didn't matter when he wasn't around. I could convince myself that I was moving on. That my new life messy, unpredictable. Mine was enough. But the second Ethan's shadow darkened my doorway, every wall I had built collapsed like cheap cardboard. He had that effect on people. On me. You shouldn't come here. I told him one Friday night, my voice firm even though my hands shook as I set two mismatched mugs on the counter. He was leaning against the wall like he owned the place. His tie long gone, top buttons undone, that dangerous smirk playing at his lips. Why not? He asked. Because you don't mean it. His smirk vanished. His eyes, God, those eyes locked on mine, darker than I'd ever seen them. Don't mean what? That you care. I snapped. It was the truth I had rehearsed in the mirror 100 times but never dared to say. You show up here when you feel like it. Say things I've been waiting years to hear. And then you disappear again like it meant nothing. The silence was suffocating. For a second, I thought he would leave. Like I wanted him to. Like I needed him to. But then his jaw clenched, and he crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbing my wrist the way he had at the elevator weeks ago. His voice was low. Raw. Do you have any idea what you do to me? I laughed bitterly. Do to you? Ethan. You're the one who. But before I could finish, he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was the kind of kiss that tasted like anger and longing and every unspoken word we'd buried under years of stolen glances. His hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer, and I hated myself for melting into it, for kissing him back with all the desperation I had tried to bury. When he pulled away, his forehead rested against mine, his breath ragged. I can't stop, he whispered. I've tried, but I can't. My heart was a drum in my chest. Then stop pretending you don't want this. His silence was an answer in itself. The days that followed blurred into something I didn't have a name for. We weren't together, not in any way that could be defined, but we weren't apart either. He'd show up unannounced, sometimes drunk, sometimes restless, sometimes quiet in a way that scared me more than his storms. We'd sit on the fire escape at 2 in the morning, sharing a blanket while the city hummed below us, his shoulder brushing mine in a way that felt both accidental and inevitable. Do you ever regret it? He asked one night, eyes fixed on the skyline. Regret what? Leaving. I exhaled slowly, watching my breath cloud in the cold air. No. I regret not doing it sooner. He was silent for a long time. Then, softly, I envy you. I turned to him, surprised. Ethan Ramirez didn't envy anyone. Why? Because you're brave enough to be who you are. I spent my whole damn life pretending. There it was, the crack in his armor. The part of him I wasn't supposed to see. I wanted to reach for him then, to tell him he didn't have to pretend anymore. Not with me. But before I could, he stood abruptly and muttered something about needing to go. And just like that, he was gone. It became a pattern. He'd come close. Close enough for me to believe we could be something real. And then he'd vanish, leaving me with nothing but the ghost of his touch. I told myself I should end it. That I deserved more than scraps. That I couldn't keep letting him tear me open and stitch me back together on his own terms. But then there were moments, tiny, fragile moments that kept me tethered to him. Like the time he brought me coffee at dawn after I'd stayed up all night writing. setting it quietly by my laptop without a word. Or the way he learned how I liked my noodles and always ordered them that way. Or the night he fell asleep on my couch, his head resting against my shoulder, his breath warm on my neck, and I stayed still for hours just to keep him there. How do you walk away from someone who feels like both your poison and your cure? The breaking point came on a night I never saw coming. I was at a small reading downtown, sharing excerpts of my stories with strangers who clapped politely even when my voice shook. I spotted him at the back of the room, leaning against the wall with that infuriating smirk. My chest tightened, but I kept reading, pretending he wasn't unraveling me with a single look. Afterward, he found me outside, the autumn air biting at our cheeks. "You're really doing it," he said softly. "You're living your dream." I shrugged, trying to mask the tremor in my voice. Trying to. He studied me for a long moment. "You're incredible. You know that." The words cut deeper than he realized, because they sounded like goodbye. "Don't," I whispered. "Don't what?" "Don't say things you don't mean." His jaw tightened. "Who says I don't mean it?" I felt the anger rising in my chest, hot and sharp. "Because if you did, you wouldn't keep running every time this gets real. You wouldn't keep hiding like I'm some dirty secret." His face hardened, and for a terrifying second, I thought he'd lash out. Instead, he just whispered, "You don't understand." "No, Ethan," I snapped, tears stinging my eyes. "I understand perfectly. You're scared. You want me when it's convenient, but you don't want to risk being seen. And I can't keep being your half measure." The silence was unbearable. The city roared around us, taxis honking, strangers laughing. But between us there was nothing but the sound of my heart breaking. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. That night, I cried harder than I had in years. Not just because of him, but because I had let myself believe, again and again, in someone who was never brave enough to believe in us. I thought it was over, but fate has a cruel way of proving you wrong. 2 weeks later, I got the call. Ethan had been in an accident. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and despair. That was my first thought as I rushed through the automatic doors, my chest tight, my legs carrying me faster than I realized. My phone call had been short. An unfamiliar voice telling me that Ethan Ramirez had been admitted after a car accident. No details. No reassurances. Just enough to send me spiraling into panic. I hadn't spoken to him in 2 weeks. 2 weeks of silence that felt like punishment. 2 weeks of me trying to stitch myself back together while avoiding the places where his ghost lingered. And now this, when I finally saw him, lying there in a hospital bed with a bandage across his forehead and bruises mottling his skin. I almost collapsed. "Ethan." I breathed, the name slipping out like a prayer. His eyes fluttered open, hazy with painkillers, and when they landed on me, something unguarded flickered across his face. "You came." "Of course I came," I snapped, though my voice trembled. "What the hell happened?" He winced, shifting slightly. "Some idiot ran a red light. Guess I wasn't invincible after all." I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. He could have died. He could have left me with nothing but memories and questions and the ache of everything unsaid. Instead, he was here, breathing, broken, but alive. I sank into the chair beside his bed, pressing my palms together to keep them from shaking. "You scared the hell out of me." "I scare myself," he admitted quietly, his gaze fixed on the ceiling. "All the time." The next few days blurred together in a haze of hospital visits and whispered conversations. Ethan hated being confined, hated the IVs and the nurses fussing over him. But what he hated most was being vulnerable, and for the first time since I'd known him, He couldn't hide behind his usual armor. Late one night, when the ward was quiet and the only light came from the machines beeping softly beside him, he looked at me with an intensity that made my chest ache. "I thought I was going to die," he said, his voice low and raw. "And the only thing I could think about was you." I froze. Not the job. Not the stupid deals. Not any of the women I was supposed to impress. Just you. His hand twitched against the sheets, as if he wanted to reach for me but wasn't sure if he had the right. And I realized, I've been a coward. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and relentless. "Ethan, no. Let me say this." He insisted, his voice shaking. "I've been terrified of what people would think, of what it would mean if I let myself have this. Have you?" But lying there, bleeding, wondering if I'd ever get another chance. None of it mattered. Not the company. Not my reputation. Just you. Always you. My breath caught in my throat. For years, I had dreamed of hearing those words. For years, I had prayed that the man who made me ache with every smile might finally see me. And now he was bruised and broken, but so devastatingly honest it shattered me. I reached for his hand, threading my fingers through his. "Then stop running. Stop hiding. If you want me, Ethan, you can't keep living like this is something to be ashamed of." His grip tightened, his eyes burning with something fierce and unyielding. "I don't want to hide anymore." Recovery wasn't easy. Physically, Ethan healed quickly, the kind of man too stubborn to let pain keep him down for long. But emotionally, it was a battlefield. He didn't know how to be vulnerable in daylight. At night, in the quiet of his apartment where no one could see, he'd let me hold him, let me kiss the scars that weren't visible. But in public, he was still Ethan Ramirez the charming, untouchable golden boy who wore his confidence like a tailored suit. The first time he reached for my hand in public, it was almost accidental. We were walking down a busy Brooklyn street, the late afternoon sun painting everything gold. His fingers brushed mine once, twice, before finally settling into a firm grip. I stopped breathing. People looked. A few glanced away quickly. Some stared. One guy muttered something under his breath as he passed. My stomach knotted, every old fear rising to the surface. But then Ethan looked at Menet at them. Not at the world. Just at me, and his smile was so steady, so proud, that for the first time, I didn't care. Still, it wasn't all easy. There were fights. God, were there fights? Like the night he canceled plans last minute to attend a corporate dinner, leaving me sitting alone at a restaurant table, feeling like a fool. When he finally showed up at my door hours later, his tie undone, smelling of whiskey and regret, I let him have it. "I'm not your secret anymore, Ethan. I'm not going to sit around waiting while you play perfect for everyone else." His eyes flashed with anger. "You think this is easy for me? You think I can just throw everything away overnight?" I already did. I shouted, tears spilling down my cheeks. I gave up everything because I couldn't keep living a lie. And if you can't do the same, then maybe you don't want this as much as you say you do. The silence that followed was brutal. He looked at me like I had ripped him open, like I had forced him to see something he wasn't ready for. And then, without a word, he turned and walked out. I thought it was over again. But the next morning, when I woke up to pounding on my door, he was there, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot, holding a paper bag of bagels like it was some kind of peace offering. "I'm an idiot," he said before I could speak. "But I'm your idiot. If you'll have me." And damn it, I did. The more we tried, the more real it became. The sex wasn't just desperate and hungry anymore. It was tender, reverent, filled with the kind of love I never thought I'd find. We cooked together, argued about which movies to watch, built a life in messy little fragments that felt more permanent than anything I'd ever known. But love isn't a straight line. It's a battlefield. And every day we fought against our fears, against the expectations of the world, against ourselves. And yet, every night, we came back to each other. The turning point came at a company gala. Ethan had insisted on bringing me. "No more hiding," he said, straightening his tie in the mirror with a confidence I wasn't sure either of us fully believed. Walking into that ballroom by his side felt like stepping into fire. Eyes turned. Whispers spread. I could feel the judgment slicing through me like knives. But Ethan never let go of my hand. Not once. When his boss raised an eyebrow. When old colleagues from my past job gave me pitying looks. When a woman I vaguely remembered from accounting sneered under her breath, Ethan just squeezed my hand tighter. His gaze never wavering. By the end of the night, I realized something. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about choosing to live openly, to claim what was ours in a world that wanted to deny it. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. That night, as we walked home through the quiet streets of Manhattan, Ethan stopped suddenly, turning to face me under the glow of a street lamp. "I love you," he said simply. The words hit me like a tidal wave. Not whispered in the dark. Not tangled in sheets. Not hidden in half-formed confessions, but here, in the open, where the world could hear. I felt tears spill down my cheeks as I whispered back, "I love you too." And just like that, the fire that had burned between us for years finally softened into something steady, something real, something worth every battle. If the gala had been fire, then the days after were smoke-thick, suffocating, lingering in every corner of our lives. The whispers traveled faster than I thought possible. By Monday morning, the office knew. By Tuesday, clients were asking questions. And by Wednesday, Ethan's mother was calling his phone nonstop. "You don't have to answer," I told him one night as we sat in our apartment. Takeout boxes littering the coffee table. The weight of the world pressing down on us. But he did. And I heard her voice, sharp and incredulous, even from across the room. "Ethan, tell me it isn't true. Tell me this is just some phase. Some mistake." He closed his eyes, pinching the bridge of his nose. "It's not a mistake, Mom. It's me. It's who I am." Her silence was worse than anger. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold. "You're throwing everything away. For him." I flinched at the venom in her tone. But Ethan's voice was steady, stronger than I'd ever heard it. "For me. For us." The call ended with a sharp click, leaving a silence that felt like a wound. Ethan sat there for a long time, his shoulders tense, his jaw clenched. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away, pacing the room like a caged animal. "She's disappointed," he muttered. "My father will be worse. The company board God. They'll crucify me." "Then let them," I said softly, though my voice shook. "We'll survive. Together." His eyes finally met mine, and for a moment, the storm inside him quieted. "Together," he repeated, as if testing the word on his tongue. But the world doesn't make together easy. The tabloids picked it up next. A grainy photo of us leaving the gala hand in hand splashed across gossip columns with headlines like "Golden Boy's Secret Love" and "Corporate Scandal" or "True Romance." At first, I tried to laugh it off. But then came the comments online. The cruel words from faceless strangers who thought they knew us. And worse, the messages from people I once called friends. Questioning, mocking, pitying. One night, after scrolling through a particularly vicious article, I slammed my phone down on the counter. "I can't do this, Ethan. I can't watch them tear us apart piece by piece." He crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbing my face between his hands, forcing me to meet his eyes. Listen to me. They don't matter. None of them matter. The only thing that matters is you and me. But what if they're right? I whispered, the fear clawing at my chest. What if we're not strong enough for this? His gaze softened, his thumbs brushing away the tears I hadn't realized were falling. Then we'll get strong. Together. We'll fight for this. For us. Because I'd rather lose everything else than lose you. And in that moment, I believed him. Not everyone turned their backs on us. My sister, Emily, called one evening, her voice warm and steady. I saw the news, she said. I braced myself for disappointment. Instead, she laughed. It's about damn time. You've been in love with him since forever. I choked on my own breath. You knew. Of course I knew, she said gently. You think I don't notice when my little brother stares at someone like they hung the moon? I'm proud of you. Both of you. Her words were a balm I didn't know I needed. For every door that slammed shut, there was one that opened, sometimes in the most unexpected places. But the hardest test came from Ethan's father. He was an imposing man. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind of presence that filled a room before he even spoke. When Ethan finally agreed to a dinner at his parents' house, my stomach twisted into knots. The meal was stiff, the conversation polite but strained. His mother barely looked at me, her fork clinking against her plate like a metronome marking the tension. His father waited until dessert before speaking. So, he said, his voice low and deliberate. This is the man you're willing to ruin your career for. I felt Ethan stiffen beside me, but I forced myself to meet his father's gaze. I'm not ruining his career, I said quietly. I'm helping him live his truth. His father's eyes narrowed. Do you have any idea what people are saying? What this will cost him? Less than it would cost him to keep living a lie, I replied. My voice shook, but I didn't back down. I love your son, and I won't apologize for that. The silence that followed was suffocating. Finally, Ethan's father set down his fork with a sharp clink. Love doesn't pay bills. Love doesn't keep a legacy intact. Ethan's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Then maybe I don't want your legacy. I turned to him, startled, but his eyes were blazing with conviction. I'm done living for everyone else's expectations. I'm building something of my own, and I'm building it with him. For the first time, his father faltered. He didn't approve, not yet, but he didn't argue either. And maybe that was the first crack in the wall. Life didn't magically get easier after that. There were still whispers, still stares, still battles waiting for us at every corner. But something had shifted. We weren't hiding anymore. We went to bookstores together, holding hands as we browsed the aisles. We kissed on park benches without glancing over our shoulders. We hosted dinners for friends who accepted us without question. Slowly, the world stopped feeling like an enemy. One night, as we sat on our rooftop with the city lights stretching endlessly before us, Ethan pulled a small box from his pocket. My breath caught. Before you panic, he said quickly, his grin nervous and boyish in a way I'd never seen. It's not what you think. Not yet. Just promise. Inside the box was a simple silver ring. No diamonds. No flash, just a band. Plain and steady. A promise that I'm not going anywhere, he said, his voice thick. That no matter how hard it gets, no matter what the world throws at us, I'll keep choosing you. Tears blurred my vision as I slipped the ring onto my finger. Then it's a promise I'll keep too. And under the New York sky, with the hum of the city wrapping around us, we sealed it with a kiss, not desperate, not afraid, but sure. We weren't perfect. We fought. We stumbled. We doubted. But we kept coming back to each other. Again and again. Until I realized that maybe that's what love really isn't, the absence of struggle. But the choice to stay even when it's hard. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of that choice. Because Ethan was mine. And I was his. The first morning I woke up and saw the silver ring on my finger. I almost didn't believe it was real. For so long, my life had been defined by waiting for Ethan to notice me. Waiting for him to choose me. Waiting for us to stop hiding. And now, the waiting was over. He was beside me, his arms slung lazily over my waist. His hair messy and his breathing even. Vulnerable. Human. Mine. For a moment, I just lay there, watching the sunlight creep across his skin, and thought, this is it. This is what happiness feels like. But happiness, I soon learned, isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's in the way he makes coffee for me before I even get out of bed. Sometimes it's in the way he texts me stupid memes during meetings. Sometimes it's in the way we argue about which takeout place is better. And the argument ends with both of us laughing too hard to care. It was ordinary. And it was perfect. Of course, not everyone saw it that way. The company backlash was brutal. Ethan's decision to live openly wasn't just personal, it was professional suicide in some people's eyes. Clients pulled out. Partners raised eyebrows. And the board whispered about reputation management. One afternoon, he came home exhausted. His tie loosened. His expression grim. They want me to step down, he admitted, dropping onto the couch with a sigh. My heart clenched. What did you say? That I'd consider it. Ethan, he held up a hand, his eyes weary. I'm not giving up. But I'm not sure I can keep fighting them and still keep my sanity. I sat beside him, taking his hand. Then maybe it's time to build something new. On your terms. Not theirs. His brows furrowed. Like what? Like whatever you want. I said softly. You've spent your whole life chasing their version of success. What if you finally chased yours? He stared at me for a long moment. And then slowly smiled. The weeks that followed were terrifying and exhilarating. Ethan resigned from the company. A move that sent shockwaves through the industry. People called him reckless, arrogant, self-destructive. But to me, he looked freer than I'd ever seen him. We talked late into the night about what came next. He had IDESA consulting firm, a nonprofit. Maybe even writing that book he always joked about. And for the first time, I saw him dreaming not about money or status, but about fulfillment. One evening, as we sat cross-legged on the living room floor with papers and coffee mugs scattered around us, he looked up at me and grinned. You know what the best part of all this is? What? You're in it. Every plan I make. Every idea I have, you're right there in the middle of it. My chest tightened with emotion. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. But the real test wasn't work. It was family. His mother hadn't spoken to him since the dinner. His father, though less openly hostile, remained distant. It hurt him more than he admitted. The quiet rejection of the people who had raised him. One Sunday, after weeks of silence, his mother called. Dinner, she said curtly. At our house. Both of you. The air in our apartment thickened instantly. Ethan looked at me, his jaw tight. We don't have to go. Yes, I said, surprising even myself. We do. The dinner was tense, but different this time. His mother's eyes lingered on me with something softer than before, not acceptance. Not yet, but curiosity. His father asked about my writing. His tone gruff but not unkind. Halfway through the meal, Ethan reached for my hand under the table. I squeezed back, And for the first time, we didn't let go. By the end of the night, his mother finally spoke. "You make him happy," she said quietly, as if the words were being pulled from her against her will. I swallowed hard. "I try." Her gaze softened, just slightly. "Then keep trying." It wasn't a blessing, but it wasn't a curse either. And for now, that was enough. Seasons changed. Winter melted into spring, and with it came a rhythm to our lives. Ethan started his own consulting firm, small but promising. I published my first book, a collection of stories about love and courage, dedicated simply for him. The night of my book launch, Ethan stood in the back of the crowded bookstore, his eyes shining with pride. When I read a passage that was unmistakably about him, he didn't look away. He smiled. Later, as we walked home, hand in hand, he whispered, "You're the bravest person I know." I laughed, leaning into him. "I'm not brave. I just stopped hiding." "That's the bravest thing of all," he said softly. And maybe he was right. Because love, I realized, isn't just about grand gestures or dramatic confessions. It's about choosing to stay, to fight, to believe. We had been fire and storm, chaos and ache. But now, we were something steadier, something stronger, something that could last. As we sat on our rooftop that night, watching the city glow beneath us, Ethan turned to me, his expression uncharacteristically shy. "One day," he said quietly, "I want to marry you." My breath caught. "Not today," he added quickly. "Not tomorrow. But someday. When we're ready. When the world doesn't matter as much as this," he gestured between us. "When it's just us." Tears blurred my vision as I whispered, "Someday." And under the endless New York sky, with the hum of the city as our witness, I believed him. Someday. That was the word that echoed in my mind for weeks. The promise that lingered on my skin like the warmth of his hand in mine. It wasn't a ring. Not yet. It wasn't vows. Not yet. But it was enough. Because for the first time, Ethan wasn't running. He was planning. Dreaming. Believing in something bigger than fear. And so was I. The months passed, and life unfolded in small, steady rhythms. Ethan's consulting firm grew faster than either of us expected. People who once doubted him now came knocking on his door. Not because of his name, but because of the integrity and brilliance he brought to the table. 2. Found my footing. My book reached readers I never imagined. And the letters I received from people who said my stories made them feel less alone reminded me why I had left that six-figure job in the first place. But the most important part wasn't the success. It was the way we learned to live together. Saturday mornings became our ritual. Pancakes in the kitchen. Music playing too loud. Flour dusting Ethan's hair because he always forgot to measure properly. Evenings were ours. Too sometimes quiet with books in our laps. Sometimes chaotic with friends filling the apartment. Sometimes reckless with kisses that still left me dizzy. It wasn't perfect. We fought about groceries, about schedules, about who forgot to take out the trash. But every fight ended with laughter, with apologies, with the unshakable truth that neither of us was going anywhere. That, I realized, was love. A year after the gala, we returned to his parents' house for Thanksgiving. This time, I wasn't just the man ruining his career. I was simply there, at the table, beside him. His father asked about my second book. His mother offered me more pie. It was awkward, yes, but it was progress. And when Ethan squeezed my hand under the table, I knew he felt it too. After dinner, his mother pulled me aside. Her voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. "He's different with you," she admitted. happier, lighter. I never thought I'd see that. I swallowed hard. I love him, I said simply. Her eyes softened, just slightly. Then keep loving him. It wasn't a blessing, but it wasn't rejection anymore. And in families, sometimes that's the first step. Winter returned, wrapping New York in snow and silence. One evening, after a long day, Ethan and I bundled up and walked through Central Park. The trees glittered with fairy lights, the lake frozen solid, children laughing as they built snowmen. Ethan stopped suddenly, tugging me to a halt beneath a canopy of lights. "Remember what I said?" he asked, his breath fogging in the cold. "About what?" "Someday." His grin was nervous, boyish. What if someday is today? Before I could process his words, he was kneeling in the snow, pulling a small velvet box from his coat pocket. My heart stopped. "I don't care who's watching," he said, his voice steady. "I don't care what the world thinks. All I care about is you. Samari me." Tears blurred my vision, spilling hot against the cold air. For a moment, couldn't speak. Then I laughed, choked and trembling. "Yes, God, yes." The crowd around us cheered. Strangers clapped. Cameras flashed. But all I saw was him on his knees in the snow, his eyes shining with everything we had fought for. When he slid the ring onto my finger, it wasn't just jewelry. It was proof. Proof that we had survived the storms, the whispers, the doubts. Proof that real love was worth every scar. The wedding came months later, small and intimate. No tabloids, no board members, no audience we had to impress. Just us, our closest friends. My sister wiping tears from her eyes. His parents sitting stiff but present in the front row. I wore a simple suit. He did too. And when we stood beneath the arch of flowers, our vows weren't rehearsed speeches, but truths we had bled for. I used to think I wasn't enough. I whispered, my voice shaking. But then you saw me, and you made me believe I could be loved exactly as I am. I promise I'll never stop choosing you. His eyes glistened as he spoke. I used to hide. From myself. From the world. From you. But you pulled me into the light. Even when I didn't deserve it. I promise I'll never let go of your hand again. When we kissed, the room erupted in applause. But all I heard was the sound of his heart beating against mine. Life after marriage wasn't a fairy tale. Bills still needed paying. Dishes still piled up in the sink. We still argued. Sometimes loudly. Sometimes foolishly. But now, every fight ended with a ring glinting on our fingers, reminding us of the promise we had made. And there were moments ordinary, beautiful moments that made everything worth it. Like the morning he made me pancakes shaped like hearts, burning half of them but grinning proudly anyway. Like the night I fell asleep on the couch, and he carried me to bed without waking me. Like the time we got caught in the rain, drenched and laughing, kissing in the middle of the street while strangers shouted at us to get inside. Moments that weren't headlines or scandals or battles. Just us. Years from now, people might remember Ethan Ramirez as the corporate golden boy who walked away. They might remember me as the writer who chose truth over comfort. But the only thing that matters, the only thing that's real is this. He never noticed me. Until he did. And when he finally did, he never stopped. Under the endless New York sky, with the city buzzing and the world moving too fast, two men stood still, hand in hand, hearts in sync. Not hiding, not running, just loving. Forever. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.